is the Historic Preservation Board meeting for March 5th, 2026. I'd like to call to order. First business is the approval of minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from last month?
I did, but then I overlooked an email about where she was asking me a question about the Bartholow House. It was not on the minutes, but she asked me if I mentioned the Bartholow House. So I replied back.
So had you mentioned the Bartholow House, or maybe it was a spelling that she was concerned with?
Yes.
Christine is watching, so she's hearing this
Yes.
conversation right now.
I did not catch her email in time, but I replied to her the other day and I told her what it was. She was asking about what it was, and I said the Bartholow House.
Okay. And so was that reflected in the minutes?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so? Little Bird is telling me right now that she fixed the spelling already.
Okay,
So
cool.
then the minutes should be as needed, I guess,
Okay.
unless you have other changes.
Nope, everything is good.
We have a vote to approve the minutes.
I approve.
So Kathy, is that in the form of a motion? You'd like to make a motion to
I
approve the minutes?
motion to approve.
And then we'll need a second.
A second.
Approval of minutes are approved.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. We'll move on to public comment. Open the floor.
No one's here.
No one's here. Move on to old business. First is cemetery work update.
All right. Let's see what we have here. So as far as Salter Cemetery, we had a youth group from Middleburg Baptist that came out on February 21st and did a cleanup and put the debris into dump trailers. That was coordinated by Jason with Keep Clay Beautiful. And then another cleanup is scheduled for Saturday, April 18th. We also went out there with dowsing rods to identify some of the unmarked graves, which was kind of cool. And the VA has approved a veteran marker for James Cornelius West, who fought in the Civil War, and the marker will be installed on March 20th. We're also working at McKendree Hammock and Doctor's Inlet. Some stone repairs and cleaning were done, but we still have more to do there. We're going to return either on the 15th or the 22nd to do some more work, and we're still researching the history of the site and those that are buried there. Steve and I attended the FPAN Cemetery Conservation Workshop, which was in San Sebastian Cemetery in St. Augustine. It was something that FPAN put on to help us learn more about stone restoration, and we learned all kinds of techniques to preserve the history and repair the stones. In Old Hickory Grove, the Revolutionary War DAR marker for Lewis Wilford is gone. It was installed in 1999 by the Jacksonville DAR folks. I've talked to Vichy at the archives, and she says it's been gone for more than 10 years, which is kind of sad because
This is the Revolutionary War soldier that's.
yeah,
I saw him like a month ago. He's still there.
right, but the brass marker is gone.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So the brass marker that the DAR put in is not there anymore. And so I reached out somebody I knew with the local DAR and asked them if they would be interested in replacing the marker for him, because obviously that's a historic marker for somebody that was in the Revolutionary War. So she's going to reach out to her regent to see if that would be something that they could replace, because I think that's an important part of history. So Rivers or Oak Ridge Cemetery, which is now the Charles E. Bennett Elementary School. That elementary school was built in probably the mid-50s. I've uncovered records for at least 4 burials that were there that were relocated to other cemeteries, and 3 in Hickory Grove and 1 to Flagler, but I'm not sure how many more there were. That's all I've been able to find. Of course, we had the FPN Crypt Conference and on the 26th and 27th in Monticello, Florida. Steve and I both attended that conference and both presented. Steve presented about the restoration of Pleasant Point Cemetery in Green Cove Springs, and I presented about all the historic cemeteries in Clay County and the work that's been done in regard to historical research. My goals for March is to follow up with Mrs. Peebles regarding the cemetery on Springbank Road, and also create a new historical cemetery data sheet. So Elizabeth Spencer wrote the book in 1973, and she went all around Clay County, and she was the head of the cemetery committee with the preservation board years ago, and she did her thing. And then there was a gentleman that did it in the 90s, kind of added on to things, but they're not complete. They're not really detailed. So my goal is to create a new data sheet that includes things like the deed records and the ownership and a lot more detail than what's on there today. And so that way it'll be stored with the archives. So I'd like to start doing that sometime this month.
Yeah, the conferences, it's been a busy last couple of weeks with the training and the conferences that Kathy mentioned. The only updates on Pleasant Point is we have FPAN coming out tomorrow, and they're going to start the official mapping of the cemetery. They decided that they do want to go ahead and map the entire cemetery and do radar across the thing, the entire grounds, which I kind of thought they would want to do, but Emily, and what's her last name? It'll come to me, but the lead archaeologist was kind of playing it by ear, but now she's really embraced the project. So tomorrow we'll start with the official mapping, and she'd like to get the whole thing done. So very excited about that. I think that's it.
We've also gone over it. Here's kind of a creepy part, but we've gone over both Pleasant Point, and I've done it at both McKendree and Sauter, and done the divining rods to go over to try and uncover where there's unmarked burials. The GPR will find disturbances in the ground where, because the ground packs over time, but it doesn't show clear burials. So we've used the divining rods in several places to try and uncover unmarked burials, and we've uncovered quite a few, both at Pleasant Point, and I was out at Sauter, and I found several out at Sauter where she had gone over with GPR. So we're finding more and more burials in the cemeteries.
So Steve, does this archaeology person indicate that she'd be willing to do some other investigations if asked on this side of the river?
She's part of the Florida Public
what she
Archaeology
is,
Network,
yeah.
so yeah, do you have something in?
Yeah, the Catholic Cemetery in Middleburg. It was a very old one. It was created or donated
Right.
by Benjamin Frisbee, but apparently it didn't seem to be of interest to anybody but
Well,
those
it's
of us who are around it.
now private property, right? So we
I
would have,
don't care.
no, I'm just saying that we would have to have the owner
Of course,
of the property,
but that's not a reason to ignore it.
no, I agree.
Good.
So we can certainly talk to Emily Jane and see if FPAM will be willing to do anything with that as well.
Yeah, that's her name, Emily Jones?
Yes.
Her last name's, yeah, that's her first.
Actually, they'll be having an event this coming week. going over there for that, so that's good.
Is that the official, could you send me the official name of the cemetery and perhaps address and coordinates and,
I know where it is.
okay, you've got all
Yeah.
that. So will you be out at the
Always
cemetery
been
tomorrow?
said that it was, the Catholics, on this side of the river the clergy were spread very thin, during the territorial period, so it was, not said to be a place where there was regular worship every week, at a certain time, but the priest would ride circuit and do baptisms and marriages and so forth. That's why, for example, Edna McDonald became a Baptist and not a Catholic because the priest didn't make it that day in 1908.
Well, I'll definitely mention it to Emily. One thing I learned at the conference is how blessed we are to have FPAN do the radar that they did here,
Yeah.
because they had a discussion panel, and that was just made up of surveyors that do this professionally, because most of the other people at the conference were trying to figure out how to get ground radar done, and I realized that we were just blessed and selected by FPAN to go ahead and roll with this, so.
Bet it, we might find a Mayan temple somewhere.
That would be cool.
What do you do about once they get identified, what do we do about like the headstones? Like they don't have headstones, I'm assuming, so how do you,
So the one in Millburg has been gone since like the 1880s. It's now on private property. There is a historic sign by the Black Creek Methodist Church that talks about the Catholic Church Cemetery and says it was 100 feet north of here, whatever, but it's been gone for quite a long time.
Well, yeah, but not from the 1880s. Because Selwyn Frisbee, who was a longtime resident and descendant of the original donor, told me that when he was a young person, that's when the tombstones disappeared.
Okay.
They were taken down, for an enterprising person who wanted to make sure he could market it without any questions being asked.
Yeah.
Sean,
I
maybe
wish
if I,
he'd found out where the tombstones went, probably into the creek, but
Probably.
if I could, like at Pleasant Point, we're never going to identify where anybody else is specifically, so. But what we might be able to do is what I saw at other cemeteries is they put brass or metal things right under the ground level with a number on them, so you can number each grave when you map it out. So I'm hoping we can have something like that, and then at some point at the entrance to the cemetery, have a full list of everyone we know that is.
have an obelisk or something with all the
Mm-hmm. So, and that's as close as we'll get, so, and I hope to find out some of that stuff
Right,
tomorrow. So
good
that's it for me on cemeteries.
would we like to move on to the historic marker progress?
Yeah, sorry, I should have put my name by this, because you had said you didn't want to have this on the agenda for the next, for this meeting. So I just wanted to provide an update that the St. Mary's marker, we had the hearing before the council with the state, and that has been approved, and that is being moved into production at this point. That's the St. Mary's Episcopal Church and Parish Hall. I have received an email back from the other group that submitted for the Middleburg Colored School, and I have yet to get back to them, but we're having conversations about that. So hopefully we can come to a resolution on that one. And that's all I have on the marker update.
As far as St. Mary's, what's the time frame now that that's in motion?
4 to 5 months.
Anything on the Middleburg Museum?
No, it's still in the works.
Do we set a date for St. Mary's to be installed, and do we do anything around that?
Not until we receive it. And then I have also heard that the Brandon Field marker is being, well, I think we talked about that last time. It's been put aside for now for installation. So if we have events coming, certainly we would let you know, because you were part of the process. We'd make sure that you could be there.
Could you repeat again the other group that's interested in the, I guess they call it the Colored School Historical Monument, besides, are we one group? And then did I hear it was a fraternity or somebody wanting to memorialize this themselves?
There was another group that submitted and their application was approved, and the state didn't realize that we were also submitting. And so there's different text that's been provided in both different markers.
And the name of this group, do we know it?
I don't have it right here, no.
How did they manage to jump ahead of us when they were, this group was working on it so long?
Well, they caught us when we were not paying attention, I'll be honest with that, and they requested for a signature for permission to put the marker on the site. And I was not thinking that it was not Maureen's group that she was working with. And so the form was signed. Now, there's other issues with the application that was submitted that we need to resolve. So besides that,
Didn't you say theirs was one-sided and ours is two-sided?
that's correct. Yes, so we're working and hoping we can come to an agreement on that.
But if it's a private group, would we not encourage private groups to come up and be proactive in solving what they see as a problem, to remember their own history, their own people?
Always, I mean, most of the
All
markers
right,
you work
so
on
I
are
would
being
think
presented
then
by
we would
private
back
groups.
down and defer to someone else.
It's important that the accurate information is posted, so that's what we need to.
Right, so
make
we
sure.
would be in support of them by providing accurate information.
Correct.
Good.
Right, but the great bulk of the real scholarly work was done by Maureen, as far as I can tell. So, yeah.
And I'm not sure their research process or how they developed the text that they did. I have not seen a bibliography that was provided, so, I don't want to say that they didn't research their information. We just need to work together to get it resolved.
I guess I'm thinking like when we're researching Catholic cemeteries, if we have suddenly a Catholic organization who's saying, hey, these are our cemeteries, we'd like to be a part of it. And a lot of the research that I know you said came up nothing is because you were looking at churches, but just about every Catholic family would have a Bible with information in it. And so if they knew we were looking to restore and get more history on it, you may have people coming just out of the woodwork saying, oh, well, in my family Bible, it says so-and-so was buried here, and the son of this, and the daughter of this. And it would be nice to get a little bit more of what we're doing in the research part, even if it was you're good at newspaper articles, get that. We're trying to research where and who are buried in this 1800s Catholic cemetery in Middleburg, and see what comes out to us. That would be nice.
So we have information from the Archdiocese about that cemetery. So we would kind of defer to them as far as what the information is about the church.
What do they have to say about it?
I have the documents at home. I couldn't tell you.
I'd like to move into new business.
Don't have any.
Open up for public comment. No one here for public comment. We'd like to move into staff comments.
So I just have two additional things. Steve, you had talked about a certificate to recognize individuals that are doing activities to preserve historic features, whatever. So I've asked if that could be something that could be done, and the county manager has approved it. So our communications team will work on developing.
Oh, right, because you asked me, I think, to do a mock-up, and I started
Yep.
looking at that.
So
And
they'll
then-
work on it and get the county manager's approval. And so if you could help me with some ideas of the types of recognition that you would like to do, people that are doing cleanup or, I don't know, just tell me the areas so that we could look at some appropriate verbiage to go on
Okay,
the certificates. That
fantastic.
would be very helpful.
I'll follow up with an email if that's
but
all right.
Certainly. I just wanted to let you know that that is finally in the works, so
Great.
I'm sorry. It
Cool,
was
that's
delayed to
very
me.
nice, very nice.
And then the CLG training that, I don't know if any of you attended. Very good, Rita. I'm glad you attended.
I learned a
Um,
lot.
Good, good. I've added the slides to the folder
Okay.
that I've provided the link to you all. So you should be able to go in there and look for the file that's the most recent date, which would be in there. So, and that's really all I have, staff comments. So.
We'd like to move into board members' comments. Start with Barbara.
Well, I guess hearing about, and I've always, being a Catholic myself, I know that Catholic cemeteries are extremely important. It's very important to be buried inside the cemetery. It's strange because before we were saying we couldn't get information, and now I hear that Kathy has managed to get some information. I think that would be nice to be shared, perhaps on your Outlook page, some of the scans of it, thereof. I also would like to see us put some things out in the newspaper like, hey, let us know. We want to preserve historic sites. If you think you have one on your property, give us a call. I mean, you know, somebody could have a few acres and have an old shed thing in the back and never really care about it, but they know it's old. Do we want to know about that? But especially pertaining to religions. And, you know, it's very important for Catholics to be buried in a Catholic cemetery and not even cremation. And all the history records are there. If not, like we learned before, nobody could find them, but now you have, so that's great. But I think that should be, let's just say, published or a way for us all to access it, because it shouldn't just be only your responsibility. You're doing a whole lot on your own, which is good, but it also doesn't really fit that this is a whole group that's kind of responsible for what you're doing. So thanks for the good stuff you're doing, because it rains on all of us happily, so.
Well, the idea that we ought to somehow put the word out that we're interested in that particular question about that place in Middleburg is good, because with the passage of years, very often the people who were the original they're not there anymore, but they may be still around, and if the word gets out, perhaps they can supply some information that would help us. But I went all the way to Mobile, Alabama a year or two ago, where the Catholic Archdiocese used to have jurisdiction on the west side of the St. John's, strangely enough. But they said they couldn't find any records from that era of the late 19th century, which is a funny thing, but quite right, you know, that Christian churches, they're the backbone of what information that can be found. Oh, sorry, that can be found. And yet, the basis of that religion is, you know, it's not so important. Once you've gone to the next world, you know, you either did what right or didn't, you know, and so it's strange that what would be such a rich source of information is treated very casually, not just by Catholics, but by so many others. If the church dissolves or whatever, they don't send it into some archive or any, they just or the circuit rider, you know, his spouse just tosses it. Yeah, so it's a challenge, but every now and then we find some really interesting stuff. So,
Would you like to go for more on anything, Joe?
oh, I might mention that I had a recent contact with Tom Parlam, and he's been sick, and so he still wants to pursue the Fort number 11 location particulars, but once again, it's back there. But of course, now nobody's holding their breath either, so that's good.
So I saw Deidre at a meeting, and I guess the picture she sent to you, Beth, has a picture of her with the GPS locations
Yes.
for the sign.
Okay.
So,
I will go back and look at that.
okay.
Melissa, any comment? Rita?
I just want to say thank you for inviting me to that training. I did learn a lot. And I guess one of the questions, will there be more trainings available throughout the year?
Yes, they've almost been once a month lately, it seems. So look for me to send an email to share.
Okay.
And they ask that you don't share it with anyone
Right.
else, that it's only CLG Historic Board members, so
Yeah.
I don't imagine you would, but that's what they ask, so I'm just letting you know.
Okay, and then I do have a question. Since I am kind of new here, I'm still trying to get my feet wet. What I'm trying to gather, I know Kathy, you and Steve are really into cemetery preservation and everything. Is there a specific goal or goals or objectives that the board has come together and said, this is what we want to focus on for the year? Or do we, as individuals, kind of adopt our own project? I kind of need a little direction because I'm kind of floundering in some of this.
So that was kind of my question a couple months ago, was what are our goals and objectives as a preservation board? So our broad focus is to preserve the history of Clay County.
Right.
Right? Which is very broad.
Yes.
So we're looking at individual projects, and correct me if I'm wrong, but looking at individual projects to focus on that pertains to that.
Okay.
So, Steve and I do a lot of work with cemetery restoration, but if there's other parts that you feel are important to historic preservation within the county, then that's something you need to bring
Okay.
up and say, hey, why are, let's focus on this, or I'd like us to start a project on this.
Okay.
Is that kind of correct?
I would think that's correct. And also, Jerry, you've been on the board the longest. Maybe you could provide some insight into what the board has worked on historically. My experience has only been the markers, but you've been on longer.
A lot of people over the years have been interested in the ideal mission that we have of creating ordinances to protect certain areas of historic. The problem is we don't have a really good working model of one that is not only good for its purpose, but will be accepted by the city leader or the county leaders in this case. At first, I thought I'd consult with what Jacksonville does, but it turns out Jacksonville has 3 or 4 different zones, and each one has, different stuff that might be useful. Then I thought, well, it's better if I can find a neighboring community within our county that is doing it, and that looked pretty good because Orange Park was working on it, but they never seemed to, quite get to the end of theirs. I don't know whether it's opposition within the city's, bureaucracy or whatever, or just the nature of people wanting to grapple with details that eventually stymie them. But yeah, that's been going on for 3 or 4 years. So I guess I'd be interested in, working with anybody else who might want to actually pursue it to get at least some sort of an initiative going, because that clearly was intended to be, by the rules that were created, one of our functions. But until we have ordinances, we can't really, every now and then they recite the fact that, are there any applications for, well, we don't even know what to tell those people, and they don't know to ask. So, yeah. So, yeah, that would be one very good thing that would help to preserve physical assets that are now being bulldozed. I'm sure every year something else goes because it's not protected yet.
I agree with that, and I think part of why I was saying let's open something out to the public, because I also listened to the whole presentation. And I was kind of surprised with one of the things towards the end. They mentioned that these boards can get injunctions against developers who are wanting to do like they do south of Green Cove, where they just tear everything in the land apart. If you had something historic on that, you wouldn't even know, because the next thing you know, the bulldozers are in, and then the ground clearing people are in, and it's all gone. I mean, and so, in a way, if the public knew that there is a board that might be able to get an injunction to tell the developer, no, just, we've all heard about the little fish they find, it's an endangered species, and it stops development for 3 years. Well, I think you would get elected by 90% if you ran on that in Green Cove to stop some of this crazy development. So if we went out and said, hey, if you think the whole back 40 acres are gonna get bulldozed and you think there's something historic there, let us know. We can investigate and perhaps do an injunction. At least that was my interpretation of a kind of a wrap-up at the end, that we can do more than be politely unburying people that have been buried for years, you know. But, which I'm not saying is bad, but it's a very narrow focus for a huge board with actual political power.
Here's a question maybe Beth could take up with the county attorneys. Is there some sort of, for the county, some sort of actual protocol for developers to consult, you know, a trained archaeologist or some, you know, historian as part of their permission to go ahead and do some of the things they're doing? Because I certainly don't see any evidence of it with all the stuff on every side, whatever, you know, or go everywhere, you know, there's no, and yet I thought that was supposed to be something that had to be done. It became an interesting issue in Middleburg when they were going to destroy the remains of a cemetery there, and they managed to stop at least part of that development on account of that.
So that's one of the reasons why we register historic cemeteries with the state of Florida,
Yeah.
is to protect them from development. And you're talking about, is it Brandon's Ferry? The one over across from Middleburg High, where the development, is that what, the one where you're referring to?
Well, I'm referring to all kinds of stuff, but, you know, Gary's Ferry was
Yeah,
on the north side of the north prong of the creek.
Right.
Samuel Gary's house was there, but then the Army moved certain elements that were sensitive. Some dragoon regiments, and the ordnance depot was deliberately put there in the course of the war because the ordnance major, you know, said, well, we can't have all these soldiers wandering around with their stogies and everything, might blow the place up. So certain important things were there, and the cemetery was there as well.
right. Well, that was registered with the state. So when Dreamfinders Homes came in and bought that property,
Mm-hmm.
and they were gonna build out the whole development, they did have archaeologists and everything there to make sure that they were not
Yeah,
encroaching upon where the cemetery was. So there are things, if they are historic cemeteries or they're archaeological sites that are registered with the state of Florida, that helps with preventing,
so
that
you're
kind of
saying
thing.
your understanding is that without such a registration, a developer doesn't have to consult anybody? So,
If it's not registered with the state, they may not know. Say, there's not a red flag that comes up and
Yeah.
says, oh, wait, you can't, it's,
Yeah.
build there.
yeah.
So that's why we've been doing so much work with the cemetery portion of it, but there also are other historical buildings and stuff that are involved with that as well.
Hmm.
And Patricia
bad.
with the state of Florida, she is with the Division of Historical Resources in the state of Florida. She's a great person to talk with, and if we know of anything, we can report it to her as well. So we're connected with her as well for any type of historic building or cemetery or whatever.
And so you have a spreadsheet in that file folder that our GIS department created, and we've edited it down so you can see the data, so you can see the years that these buildings were built. So you can start, if you wanted, you could start documenting, doing a master site file for a building. If you see that it's from the 1800s, you could go in. If there's no master site file form already created, you could go ahead and create one. And just provide whatever research you can for those facilities. You're shaking your head, Jerry. What's wrong?
No, no, I was just thinking it's too late, but, you know, my own mother's family, you know, I have a preemption claim by them, you know, from 1843, I think. So I know exactly where the parcel was, but there's nothing to see there anymore, of course, like most other things. But it would be kind of interesting to at least note that they used to be there. But yeah, I didn't want to make that a big public thing because it's not a big deal for anybody but me. Yeah. So,
My suggestion is for us to get a better handle on our original charter, at least the one that we have that's current. And so I'm going to try to do a better job of bringing that to every meeting so we actually can go over those things, at least while we discuss. And if something pops up within our scope, we can at least ask questions on it. And then we also can, if hopefully, dig a little bit deeper. And I think understanding our original charter is going to help us navigate what we can and can't do a little bit better. I have apologized because I'm not as familiar with it.
I think too, if some of the documentation, I'm thinking of what Kathy found. If, seeing how we're all sharing this database now in a separate, it would be, put some of that out for the rest of us to see. And then it's not, I know Jerry's mentioned, you know, somebody has got a document somewhere. Well, now they're feeling sick, so nobody can get to it. It's in their house or on their computer. So we can start throwing some of this stuff perhaps in our general Outlook thing. Although, just
So-
personally, I can't get Outlook on my phone, the whole program, because my phone is a level 8 or something and I'm not up. So it's now Yahoo has, I don't have any problem with Yahoo. I don't have any problem with other ones. So Outlook is restricting some of us by not having, I know once I wanted to put something on and they said, oh, well, you can get the old version. Because my version wasn't up to date, even though I've tried to bring it up to date. So it might be nice if there's an old version of Outlook that some of us can put on. I don't know if your IT guy can find one. And then I could have it on my phone besides my computer.
So one of the things that's on my list to do is to update the historical records for the archives. Because the archives, Clay County Archives, is where a lot of this information is held. And so their information is kind of piecemeal. And so I'm working with Vichy so that we can update it and have it available for everyone. So if you wanted to look and see all the historical cemeteries in Clay County, it would be there. It would have the deed records, so you'd know the history of, you know, the land and who's buried there and the Florida Master Site File and all that stuff, because that's what the archives do. They are supposed to house all that information.
Right, I guess, I'm thinking more of like Beth has had some where there's a link. So to us, link on this to go over here, link on this to go over here. So if some of this, because we're talking cemeteries like all the time. So if there's data out there, so have a link to what you're talking about.
At the
So,
archives.
yeah, link to what you would do there. This is our most recent stuff, so then we can look it up too.
So do you have access to the internet?
Yes.
Okay. So these are saved via share drive, so we'll have to try and figure out why you can't have access, because the link should work and take
Oh,
you
the
to.
links work on my computer. I'm just saying
Okay.
that Outlook program itself is not always available to everybody,
So
depending
that-
on how old their phone is or how old their computer is. I mean, it's brand new apparently, and only wants to have the new version. I don't know how long has Outlook been around?
A long
10,
time.
15, 20 years? I don't
Okay,
know.
so I should be able to get an older version and be able to do it.
Yeah.
On my phone.
Oh.
Meanwhile, I'll go to my computer. It's like, at least it's
We may have
accessible.
to put you in touch with our IT department to see if they can help you.
Yeah, thank you. I worked with Stan already. He's a good
Okay.
guy.
Good.
Is that all, Rita?
Yes, thank you.
Kathy, comments?
Nope, I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, well, this meeting for March 5th, Historic Preservation Board is adjourned.
Murray.
Yes.
I know she goes by Emily Jane, but last name is
Yeah,
Murray.
so you were
So
fine.
we call her MJ.